Members and staff on the line will be resuming the council meeting in open session shortly. We're just finalizing an additional document. Thank you.
Colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, bienvenue, welcome back. For the benefit of those joining us online, City Council just met in camera in order to receive an update regarding the investigation of a complaint against Councillor Shirelli pursuant to the city's violence and harassment in the workplace policy and the Occupational Health and Safety Act. During the in-camera session, no votes were taken other than procedural motions and/or directions to staff. We'll now give direction to staff in open session arising from this matter. Then we will go to questions and comments on the Integrity Commissioner's report. And I believe Mr. Marlowe is available for comments. Is he online, Mr. Marlowe?
I'm here, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. So just so everyone has it at the beginning, we will deal with it at the end of the comments, but the direction I'm proposing to staff is the following. Members of Council received a briefing from staff on an investigation under the city's violence and harassment of the workplace policy that determined that Councillor Shirelli had engaged in harassment in the workplace. As a result, Council is directing that staff provide Council with an outline of the remedial options available in response to the workplace investigation of a complaint against Councillor Shirelli pursuant to the city's violence and harassment in the workplace policy prior to or concurrent with the delivery of the Integrity Commissioner second report into alleged breaches of the Code of Conduct for members of Council involving 2 complaints against Councillor Shirelli from former employees. So we'll deal with that at the end. So now, colleagues, I don't know, Mr. Marlowe, do you have any opening comments, or would you like to go straight to questions and comments from staff?
No, good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. I have nothing else to add to what is in my report, and I would welcome questions. If they are specific to questions to specific paragraphs, I would appreciate if councillors and yourself would identify the number of the paragraph. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So questions and comments from members of council on the Integrity Commission's report and the recommendations that are attached on page 4 of our agenda. And I'm sorry, we have a technical amendment. I should maybe put this on the floor. Councillor Luloff, you have a technical amendment seconded by Councillor Dudas. If you'd like to introduce that, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a quick moment here. Madam Clerk, if you could put it up on the screen, I'm just having some technical difficulties here.
One moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Whereas recommendation 2 of the report to Council on an inquiry respecting the conduct of Councillor Chiarelli recommends Council impose sanctions consisting of suspension of the remuneration paid to Councillor Chiarelli in respect of his service as a member of Council for 270 days. It's 90 days for each individual. Contravention of the code, commencing on adoption of this report. And whereas staff have advised that establishing an effective date to implement any suspension of remuneration to align with the appropriate pay period would assist staff in the administration of this penalty and provide clarity on the subject of the suspension. And there are insured benefits obligations that must be considered as part of this implementation, given that the subject remains a sitting member of Council, and whereas payroll staff has recommended an effective date of August 14th, 2020 for implementation. Therefore, be it resolved that recommendation 2 be amended to replace commencing on adoption of this report with commencing on August 14th, 2020 to align with the appropriate pay period such that all insured benefits obligations as determined by the City Solicitor and Director of Human Resources are met.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and that's seconded by Councillor Dudas. So questions and comments on the report. Councillor Cloutier, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Thank you, Monsieur Marleau, for your work. Let me just say at the outset that I
Thank you, Mr. Marleau. I accept the findings. J'accepte.
Certainly happy to be able to speak up finally. Of course, my first thoughts are with the brave women who came forward to share their experience last September. I want to say how deeply sorry I am to the victims of the harassment that was perpetrated by Councillor Chiarelli, and again, that is in the context of accepting the findings by the Integrity Commissioner. It's upsetting that this awful behavior that's well documented in the report and how it's impacted the public's confidence in this governance body, this council, and this municipal administration. And I hope that we could today do what we can to do our part to support these victims and to offer the little justice we can, to begin to rebuild that confidence with them and with the greater. And in that, I am dissatisfied with the options presented to us by the Integrity Commissioner. Not that I disagree, that those are the options he's got to offer to us. I'm sorry that that is the limit of this council's authority because it's totally inadequate. Mr. Marleau, just a couple of questions. There was a statement put out by Councillor Chiarelli last week. I think he'd said the report's unfair because it was completed without consideration for Councillor Chiarelli's, a third person was writing this, Councillor Chiarelli having the opportunity to comment. Can you just, again, briefly tell us of the opportunities that you had provided to that councillor to provide information that might have been useful in your report?
Yes, to your worship, to the councillor. If you read through the timeline in my report of the opportunities that the councillor was offered in order to comment or you participate. It goes back to the initial notice of the complaints, which were filed separately with him and his legal advisor, whereby he had 10 days to respond. They chose not to respond and to claim that they would be proceeding to a jurisdictional challenge at divisional court. Subsequently, I advised them that I would continue with my investigation, and did so. There's, I'm not counted the number, but along the way, he was offered many opportunities to confirm that he wishes to participate, to reply. He was invited to interview. Of course, I received medical certificates in that process. I respected every one of them. I only recontacted the counselor or his lawyer after that medical certificate expiry date. And in each case, I either had a refusal to participate or refusal to confirm participation, and in several cases, no reply at all, including in the last month, one last effort at the end of May where I gave them 2 days to simply give me a yes or no on participation. I received no reply. The counselor and his legal advisor were given a draft of the report that is before you without the recommendations, of course, but with the findings, given 10 days, almost 10 days to comment, and again, there was no reply. Hence, I proceeded and filed my report with the clerk on June 9th.
Mr. Marleau, did you ever provide any, for completeness, written questions to him to provide, with which to provide answers?
No, he was not provided with written questions as such, but he was invited to a formal interview with the investigator, which he declined.
Okay. And again, has he ever indicated, he or his legal team, that they accept the jurisdiction of the Integrity Commissioner's office in this?
No, they never really sort of stated they accepted jurisdiction or definition of my jurisdiction as I interpreted it. And neither did they confirm in a very straightforward way that participation would happen.
Okay. To our legal team, can you tell us what specifically Councillor Chiarelli's legal team filed in court on Friday, July 10th, and how that might impact our decision today or its implementation?
On Friday, Councillor Chiarelli's legal counsel made a request of the court's authorization because of the rules that govern the courts now with COVID-19. It's essentially a prerequisite to the issuance or the commencement of an application. They filed that request to commence the application with the court. As was noted earlier today, the court has since advised that it is not issuing formal applications at this point, but that it will look to schedule what's called a case conference with the various parties and the legal counsel to discuss the scheduling of the matter, to set a timetable for the exchange of materials, any cross-examinations, and for ultimately a hearing of that application. That said, that request has been made and that response been issued. That does not, in my view, interfere in any way with Council's consideration of the report, the receipt of the report, or the consideration of the recommendations that the Integrity Commissioner has put forward.
Okay. So once should Council choose to accept the recommendations of the IC, that is it for Council with respect to this report. That case is closed. The sanctions are implemented, and I understand that there might be another, it's in the news that there might be another report by the Integrity Commissioner at another point down the road. But with respect to these findings, and that's it for Council. We are done with this.
So is
That's correct, Mr.
That's correct. Okay. With respect to is the councillor still subject, if he comes back, he can sit at the council table and participate in committee and council, even though he is without pay for 180 days, or 270 days, sorry.
Who's that to, Councillor?
Legal team, still to the legal.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. The proposed penalty set out in the Integrity Commission's recommendations deals solely with remuneration, and it does not suspend the councillor from the ability to perform his duties as a councillor or as a member of council.
Noted. And though he has this sanction, he still has to comply with the rules and regulations of council with all its rights and responsibilities. That is a 3-month rule to attend council. And that is also that he can interact with his staff and residents of College Ward. He has an obligation to do that as per the rules of council.
Mr. Mayor, the other rules are unaffected by anything that any of the penalties that might be imposed should council adopt the recommendations or variation of them.
Okay. Thank you very much. Et encore une fois, Monsieur Marleau, merci beaucoup pour votre travail.
Thank you, Mr. Merlot. This was a very good work in these circumstances, so thank you very much. Thank you very much, Conseiller Coultier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Marleau, for your report and your findings. As a liaison for women and gender equity, I want to thank you for this work. And I want to give a particular thanks to those persons who came forward to tell us what they've had to deal with and for giving us evidence and information on this so that we could proceed. I know this must have been incredibly difficult, as it always is, and I know that we all appreciate the fact that this is not easy. My question is about, we're going to be doing a review of recruitment and hiring processes. I imagine you've seen the report. Do you have any comment in terms of going forward based on your findings? In terms of what we can do to prevent these situations? Is it possible for you to comment on that?
Your Worship, to the Councillor, through you, my role is to formulate recommendations and to make findings of breaches. I've been very careful in prior reports not to address policy. I have views, but I don't believe that it's part of my role to, unless I find a fatal flaw of some sort in an existing policy that led to a circumstance that for an inadvertent breach or for a deliberate breach, I would be reluctant to comment. I'm very well aware of the work that's been done by the clerk and recently by FEDCO about the role and the conditions of staff relations of counselors' assistants. And so in the counselor's role in recruiting. I, if you don't mind, I would prefer not to comment at this time about, as you're still continuing your own deliberations, as to what my views would be. I have some experience as former clerk of the House with these kinds of issues, but in my role as IC, I think I should limit my comments to findings and recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Frankly, I think your report speaks for itself, that we wouldn't be here if we had not put something else in place. So I think it's time for us to look at that, as it were, because what's accomplished here is because we did have weaknesses in our recruiting process, and not to mention sexual harassment rules and training. So anyway, I want to thank thank you again for your work. That's it.
Great, thank you. Councillor McKenney, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Marlowe, for your finding. Solid finding of sexual harassment in Councillor Chiarelli's workplace towards his former staff. On the issue of remuneration, if Councillor Chiarelli were to resign within the next 3, 6, 9 months, what would be the impact of this penalty, and especially vis-a-vis any payment after his employment, and how would that affect his ongoing? If you leave council today, for how long would you continue to get paid? What does the severance look like if you resign mid-term, and how would this penalty affect his severance?
Your Worship, on the content of that question, I would like to defer to obviously the clerk or city solicitor for those kinds of details. I would like to add a small point, however, in the preamble to the councillor's question, where kind thanks to me for the work I've done. She referred to findings of harassment against former employees. The essence of this report, I need to be clear, the essence of this report deals with interviewees, candidates for employment who never worked for the council. As I said in an earlier report, I did mention that I had 2 complaints from former employees. That's public knowledge. I'm in the process of working on that. If I have findings that are significant, I will be making a report, and if I make a report, I will obviously make recommendations. I just wanted to be clear that there are 2 different situations here. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. No, and apologize for that. I did note that right after I said it. Thank you. So I'll defer to the clerk or the city solicitor on the other.
I'll begin if Mr. White has anything to add. With regards to any councillor resigning today or in the near future, there is no severance paid by the City of Ottawa. They are like an employee. They resign and they would leave public office. So on that then, if the penalty is for 9 months of pay, would the councillor then owe that? Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, subject to Mr. White's correcting me, no, there would be no clawback or nothing. It's a future-going penalty in that regards.
And is there anything that we can do to change that?
Mr. Mayor, I will take that under advisement as we move forward with midterm governance and see if I can get an answer to the councillor's question.
Okay, I appreciate that. It just seems to me that, we do run the risk here of somebody not actually paying a penalty if it cannot be, if the impact can't be retroactive. So, I would like to know what our options are going forward to ensure that at least some penalty is paid. We don't have very much at our discretion when something like this occurs. So I would like to know what all the options are in front of us, and then we can make those decisions. Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Councillor?
No.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moffat, please.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure exactly who the questions. I mean, I think speak for others when the report being broken up into two. I think we all would have liked to see this sooner. We'd like to see the other report sooner. The longer we wait, it's more difficult for the women who had the courage to come forward. But some questions on the timelines in this. So in some of the communications between the city and Mr. Sevigny, it's obvious that Mr. Sevigny was retained in July. The aforementioned workplace harassment investigation was made clear to Mr. Chiarelli in August. When, Mr. Marleau, did you start your investigation?
The first notice to the councillor was on September 17th.
Okay, so he was obviously aware 2 months prior. So your investigation likely wouldn't have caught him off guard.
I have no knowledge of what he had done prior to that date.
Sorry, someone's currently drilling a hole underneath me. I need to wait for them to stop. There we go. So just a question for, oh, here we go again.
It sounds like a herd of cows, and you are on the country, aren't you?
Councillor, is that at your house that's being done?
Yeah, so I was told there'd be 4 holes being drilled near me. I don't know if that was number 4, but I do want to try to keep going ahead. So for Mr. White, the letter that you sent to Mr. Sevigny regarding the expenses and the attempt to expense Mr. Sevigny's, I'll come back.
Okay, we'll go on to Councillor Eglai, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for city staff. So we have a technical, what we're calling a technical amendment in front of us that changes the stop date for payments to Councillor Chiarelli should, and I stress should, we make a decision today to endorse the recommendations from the Integrity Commissioner. That report and that possibility has been in the public eye, so to speak, for a week or so. I'm just wondering, why is it going to take a week, not a week, rather a month, to essentially say stop payment? I'm a little confused about what steps need to be taken to make that happen and why it can't be more immediate than that. Again, assuming we vote in favor of endorsing the report, which again, we'll have to wait till the end of the debate. But I'm just curious as to what steps are necessary that we're taking a whole month to implement something that we thought was potentially done immediately.
Councillor, it's Wendy Stephenson speaking. Having oversight of payroll and looking at the payroll cycles that we have here at the City of Ottawa, what we have recommended in the motion, the technical amendment that you have before you today, ensures that we put all of the processes in place and we meet the statutory requirements in terms of our benefits that we provide and notification of ceasing of that to cease the payroll. And that's why we've requested that date be August the 14th.
Okay. And again, for staff, this has no impact on Councillor Chiarelli's office budget, correct? And his ability to spend his office budget within a councillor's discretion?
That would be correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Marleau, for your work on this file. I know a lot of people were waiting very anxiously for the results, and you took the time and did the due diligence to prepare a report for us that's very detailed. So I'm sure I speak for all of council in saying we appreciate the effort and time that you put into this. It does a service, I think, to the people who filed the complaints, that you took this time and effort and came forward with such a complete response to their concerns. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Moffat, how are things with the drill?
He's not done yet, so go ahead to Councillor Brockington.
Okay, Councillor Brockington.
Reminds me of a bad visit to the dentist recently. Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Marleau, just to repeat comments that Councillor Eglai and others stated, thank you. I read your report word for word, and you definitely put in the effort to ensure a thorough investigation, and that all sides had ample opportunity to provide their side of the story to what was alleged. To the three complainants, I simply say thank you for your courage to step forward. I believe you. I believe the concerns that you've brought forward through this formal process, and I hope that council can make some changes going forward and that there's some small sense of justice that can be delivered coming out of this. Mr. Marleau, you're recommending the most harsh punishment possible or available to us. I want you to elaborate on why you believe the harshest punishment possible is worthy in this instance.
Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I did outline in my report that I felt that this suspension of remuneration should be used in most of the egregious cases. I would very much continue to advocate that it be a progressive process. Normally in this kinds of exchange, when you've got participation, you might get an explanation of sorts that would temper going to the maximum of the limit. You might even have remorse, you might even have an apology, you might even have a substantive explanation that you could set aside the most serious of the recommendations. In this particular case, as I said in my report, all I have is a public denial, an absolute public denial, which I deem to be not credible. And the elected public office holder is the most senior member, having practiced municipal politics on council. He's not a rookie. And in cases like this, of harassment, sexual harassment, misconduct, we're in 2020, and the policies that the city has adopted are clear. The legislation in the province is clear. I felt that no serious sanction was justified, but of course, it's up to council to decide. You have the ability to reduce the 90 days.
Thank you for that. On that note, either a question for you or the clerk, do we have any other discretion today? There was a question about the office budget. If councillor wants to use his office budget for hospitality, for travel, to go to conferences over the next 9 months, to go to ticketed events, do we have any ability to put restrictions on those particular expense claims?
Mr. Mayor, at this point in time, I would suggest that council has practices and procedures, including expense policies, in place. Having said that, and looking at the direction that council has already given to me with regards to looking at some future remedial measures, I would suggest that we will probably be coming back with some of those in the near future.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll leave it at there. Thank you again, Mr. Marleau, for your substantive report that we're getting today. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Moffat, how are things?
Thanks. I'll give it another go here. So as I was saying, just on the letter, November 21st, 2019, Mr. Sevigny, from David White, what was the outcome of that exchange? Was that money actually charged to the budget? Was that accepted?
Ultimately, I have to defer to the clerk. My understanding is that none of those funds were paid.
Mr. Mayor, clerk, that would be correct. We have not made any such payments.
But the councillor made a clear attempt to fund their legal defense from their constituency services budget.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the ask was made.
All right, so that's incredibly egregious. To the Integrity Commissioner, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong on this, do we not also have the authority to remove members of council from committees based on the outcome of a report like this?
It's my interpretation that you do have the authority to remove from chairs or from membership of committees or boards that councillors are pointing to, but I'll defer to Mr. White for the legal interpretation.
Mr. Mayor, the Municipal Act is quite specific in terms of the penalties that a municipality is entitled, or a municipal council is entitled to impose on receipt of a finding of a breach of a code of conduct for members of council. That said, certainly the policy and the code itself contemplate other remedial actions. So provided that the other action is not in fact a penalty, but a remedial action, those have been supported as other types of steps that a municipality or a municipal council take in these instances.
Right, so I'm just curious why it wasn't included in the recommendation.
I considered it. I have to respond, Mr. Mayor, that I did consider the possibility of committee membership removal as a recommendation, but I felt having gone to the maximum sanction, maximum penalty that the statute provides for as a recommendation, I felt I should leave it at that. Now, it's up to council to look at other options that they have. As Mr. White said, if you feel there's more remedial actions to be taken thereafter, you're certainly within your authority and jurisdiction to deal with it.
That's something council should likely consider before any committees meet again. Just in closing, I just want to commend, there's one of the, I believe it's Appendix C, which is a Reddit thread between a complainant and then a user, just thanking that individual. One of the challenges with this is that the folks who come forward and apply for jobs with councillors, if they're not familiar with this environment, they don't know what they're getting. If their only experience with that conversation is what they got in these three accounts, that speaks poorly of every one of us. It shows that's the climate that exists at City Hall, that exists in elected officials' offices. That's not what we want it portrayed out there. So just a big thank you to the individual in Appendix C who defended other offices, who said that that's not how this is, that other offices are much better than this. We just need to make sure that this kind of thing can't happen again. I think some of the recommendations that are going to come forward later, a motion involving, I believe, Councillor McKenney and Councillor Eglai, will prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future. We need to remain steadfast on our commitment to addressing this type of situation and preventing it from ever happening again. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anyone else wish to speak to the item? So, colleagues, I'd like to provide some brief comments today on the Integrity Commissioner's report. I want to start by reminding everyone that we are considering this report because of the brave women that came forward. They've courageously shared their extremely personal stories as outlined in the Integrity Commissioner's report. Elles ont courageusement partagé leur histoire.
They were courageous in sharing their personal history as presented in Commissaire Marleau's report.
Plainly, under paragraph 132, that, quote, because the councillor is the longest-serving elected public office holder on council, and that this offensive and disreputable behavior has been going on for a very long time, I have decided that the most severe of sanctions are warranted in this case, end quote. To each and every woman who came forward, on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I thank you and commend you for your courage, strength, and perseverance. I also want to take this opportunity to recognize the investigative reporting of Joanne Chianello on this issue. She and I don't agree on a lot of things, but her work on this story has been thorough, sensitive, and even-handed. She has helped to give a public voice to these courageous women. Elle a contribué à donner une voix publique à ces
She gave a voice to these courageous women.
Not hesitate to come forward and speak up when they feel that a power relationship or a trust relationship has been abused. I also want to sincerely thank our Integrity Commissioner, Robert Marleau, for having conducted a very thorough, professional, diligent, and independent investigation. This, despite having his office's jurisdiction challenged on various occasions by Mr. Chiarelli and his legal team. This report details significant offensive and unacceptable behaviors, including but not limited to asking potential employees if they will go braless to gather information, or they would recruit male volunteers at nightclubs, and asking a candidate if they considered dancing in a strip club from page 1 of the report. Clearly, this type of behavior has no place in the workplace. In my opinion, it is unacceptable at any time or in any place. Il est clair que ce comportement n'a pas.
It is clear that this is completely unacceptable in a working environment. It's not acceptable in any way or at any place.
Documents in section 7 through section 31 of his report the numerous opportunities that Councillor Chiarelli has had to represent his position in response to these allegations. As outlined in section 32, Councillor Chiarelli refused to respond to the multiple invitations to participate and challenge the summons to provide testimony under oath. My experience has been that innocent people don't sneak into council and then sneak out the back door of City Hall. After a careful, detailed, and professional investigation, Mr. Marleau concludes in section 87 of his report that, quote, the findings of this report are not solely based on the testimony of the complainants. This is not simply a he said, she said situation. The findings take into consideration the corroborating testimony of witnesses and the documentary evidence provided by the complainants. Each of these 3 complainants identified at least one witness who was contacted by the investigator. Each of the 3 complainants provided documentary evidence which was consistent with their testimony, end quote. After his review, the Integrity Commissioner concluded in section 103, and I quote, having carefully reviewed the audio recordings, transcripts, and other corroborating evidence, I concluded that the complaints and witnesses were credible and reliable, end quote, and that, quote, I find that the allegations are founded and find the respondent has breached sections 4.1 and 4.4 of the Code of Conduct in respect of each of these 3 complainants, section 109 of the report, end quote. I would urge all members of Council to support these recommendations by the Integrity Commissioner and speak out loudly against this member's disgusting and completely inappropriate behavior. So we have a motion by Councillor Luloff and Dudas with respect to the pay schedule. On the motion, the amendment carried. Carried. And we have the direction to staff that I read out. Members of Council agreeable to this direction? Agreed? Agreed. So on the main report as amended, yeas and nays, please.
Councillor Moffat.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff.
Yes.
Councillor Harder.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Sudds.
Yes.
Councillor DeRudes.
So is Councillor DeRusse there? I'd ask members to please be prepared to vote. Councillor DeRusse?
Yes.
Conseil Cloutier.
Oui.
Councillor Leeper.
Yes.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Madam Clerk, I don't know if I was missed because my line, I went offline, but Councillor Kavanagh.
With the will of council, agreed? Councillor Kavanagh?
Yes.
Councillor Kavanagh?
Yes.
All right. Councillor El-Shantiri.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Aglai.
Yes.
Councillor Shirelli. Councillor McKenney.
Yes.
Councillor Menard.
Yes.
Councillor Meehan.
Yes.
Conseil Fleury.
Oui.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor King.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes.
Councillor Deans. Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Mayor Watson.
Yes.
21 yeas.
Okay, thank you. So now, colleagues, we're going to get our legal briefing from our city transportation general manager. So we'd follow the same advice. I'll just read the motion here. Councillor Dudas, if you'd like to move, seconded by Councillor El-Shantiri, the motion with respect to Confederation Line Stage 1 legal update.
In accordance with the procedure bylaw, being bylaw number 2019-8, City Council resolved in camera pursuant to subsection 13(1)(e), litigation or potential litigation affecting the city, and 13(1)(f), the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, to receive and consider the O-Train Confederation Line LRT Stage 1 legal update in camera, reporting out date not to be reported out.
Okay, on
Mr.
the
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to do a quick consent agenda so some of the staff could leave?
Yeah, I think the challenge is, I think there are a lot of items that people want to speak on. So, you know, we can go by if people at least get rid of the ones that are not controversial, I suppose.
Yeah,
okay.
That's what I was thinking.
All right, so if there's any comment, we'll just hold it. Otherwise, we'll just move forward. So Ward 19, Cumberland vacancy options. Anyone on that? Carried?
Carried. By-election, please.
Good luck to the candidates.
Please.
Item 4, Ottawa Community Ice Partners. Carried.
Carried.
Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, zoning bylaw, Snake Island Road. Councillor DeRuze and El-Shantiri have a technical amendment. Councillor DeRuze.
Councillor Shantiri, I don't have it. Do you have it?
We'll just get it on the screen.
So I can read it for you. Therefore, be it resolved, the Council replace Document 2, Proposed Official Plan Amendment, Document 3, Details of Recommended Zoning, and Document 4, Zoning Key Plan Map, with the attached documents to include Areas B, as shown on the revised Document 4, and be it further resolved that pursuant to the Planning Act, subsection 3417, no further notice be given. So on the amendment, Carried. On the main report on 7650 Snake Island Road? Carried.
Carried.
Fallowfield bleak soil study results? Carried.
Carried.
Temporary zoning bylaw, outdoor commercial patios and pop-up retail stores. Councillor Leeper and McKenney have I believe this is a technical amendment. Councillor Leeper?
No, yeah, it's somewhat technical, and I'm sorry, I can't get into the motion. Could it be put on screen, please?
Yeah, in the interim, I can read it. Therefore, be it resolved that Council amend document 1 in the report be amended as followed. Add the following text. G, despite 7A above, an outdoor commercial patio is permitted on the properties municipally known as 104, 106, and 108 Pinney Street where associated with a permitted use of TM11 zone.
Thank you, Mayor. One of our local restaurants got permission to put in one of the parking lot patios. It turns out the zoning wasn't quite right to apply to that interim policy, and they have notified the neighbors, and this is just allowing them to move ahead.
And the neighbors are okay?
Yep.
Okay. So on the technical amendment by Leeper McKenney, carried. On the main report as amended, carried. Sorry, you want yeas and nays? No? Okay. No, neither do I. Item 8, the City of Ottawa open to the opportunity to participate in any review of long-term care homes. Carried. Legislative 5-year review of the 10-year housing and homelessness plan. Councillor King and Fleury have a motion. Councillor King.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. After a wide range of discussions that I had with many community members over more than a year concerning the establishment of an anti-racism secretariat, there was indeed indicated a strong desire to ensure that the city worked to see equity in housing policies. This motion, seconded by Councillor Fleury, works to address these concerns, which were raised by Indigenous people, newcomers, women, youth, and our two-spirit, lesbian, gay, transgendered, queer plus communities. At the end of the motion, it says, therefore, be it resolved that agencies funded by the city for the delivery of housing and homelessness services acknowledge and promote the city's guiding principles as outlined in the Women and Gender Equity Strategy, once released, and future principles identified by the Anti-Racism Secretariat when delivering the funded services.
Okay, so on the amendment, carried?
Carried.
On the main sorry. The main reports, carried. Okay, FEDCO, capital budget adjustment and closing of projects.
I have a quick question on the main motion.
Sorry? Councillor Menard.
On the main item, I have a question on it. I don't need to hold it. It's a quick question around the LPT on the 10-year housing homelessness plan.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that, Councillor. Is that a question to Councillor King?
No, it's on the main item, the 10-year housing and homelessness item. Before carrying it, I have a question of staff.
Okay, is it detailed? We can come back to it then if you want.
It's very quick. It's just around the land, the LTT that Toronto has and funnels into affordable housing in their city, and whether or not that is being considered, that's a potential to be considered here in Ottawa for affordable housing purposes.
Treasurer.
Councillor, so part of the work that's going to be done between now and the fall is a long-range financial plan where we would be looking at financial tools available to the city in order to be able to fund the housing and homelessness plan. So we would be looking at available tools as they are exist in the municipality right now.
Right, and this would be obviously a request we'd have to make of the province for that type of a tool for more affordable housing in Ottawa. So, okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor. And I'm in favor.
Sorry, I wasn't. What was the funding source, Councillor? You got cut off.
It's the LT as it is in Toronto.
Sorry, the LP?
The LTT.
Which is?
Land transfer.
Oh, the land transfer. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, so on FEDCO capital budget adjustments, carried.
Carried.
And carried on the long-term housing, carried. Item 11, 2019 procurement year in review. Carried. Carried. Review.
I'll oppose that one.
Sorry, is that a dissent, Councillor?
Yeah, dissent from Bernard. Thank you.
I think you're dissent on speaking something.
Sorry, a dissent on procurement?
Yes.
Okay. Review of recruitment and hiring processes for councillors' assistants. I think there'll be more of a discussion on that, so we'll come back. And we have an amendment as well. Ottawa ward boundary, I think there'll be, I have a motion on that, as does Councillor Fleury. NCC building LeBreton development, we've got a motion on that that's substantive. We'll come back to that. Long-term plan for city-owned properties on Sunland Drive. Carried.
Carried.
Federation of Canadian Municipalities funding for a Better Homes loan program to support residential retrofit projects. Carried. Planning Committee report number 26, zoning bylaw amendments 70 Gloucester, 89 and 91 Nepean Street, modification de règlement de zonage.
Amendment of zoning regulations. Carried.
18, application for new construction at 246 Gilmore Street. Carried. Zoning bylaw amendment 246 Gilmore Street. Carried. Affordable housing capital plan 2020. Carried. It goes to both committees. Zoning bylaw amendment.
This is Councillor Fleury. I just did dissent on recommendation 4.
Recommendation 4?
Yes.
Okay. Note it. Item 21, zoning bylaw amendment 244 Fountain Place. Carried. Sorry, is carried?
Carried.
Okay.
Dissent by Councillor Fleury, Mr. Mayor.
On what, on Fountain Place?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Item 22, zoning bylaw amendment 1110 Fisher. I think we'll probably have some comment, and we have a technical amendment on that. Next is Planning Committee report number 27, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment 450 Rochester, 367, 369, and 371 Preston Street. Carried. Item 24, zoning bylaw amendment, modification de règlement de zonage 1, 9 Chemin Canfield et 13, 15, 17 Croissant Park.
And 13, 15, and 17 Parkmount Crescent.
Bulk consent. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the bulk consent?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item K.
Sorry, what item? K?
Item K.
Okay. Okay, we'll hold that.
Okay.
Anything else on consent, bulk consent? Okay, so we've got, yeah, carried, bulk consent except item K, carried?
Carried.
Okay, so we're going to go in camera now.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, who's that?
Councillor Brockington.
Yes?
Item 22, which is 1110 Fisher, I'm not holding that for debate. I know there's a technical amendment. Can we just vote on the matter?
Just a second here. Item 22. So the technical amendment by Councillor Harder and Gower.
Harder. Yeah.
All right. Do you want to introduce the amendment?
Yes. It's a really simple one, and it's because that part was missing in the original report, and the part that was missing was the legend in document 1 be revised to Area A to be rezoned from R3A brackets 229 to R5B XXX brackets, and then SXX. The SXX, the S stands for the schedule. The XXS will be filled in after this this report is approved, and the document 2 be amended by adding the following text as item 2B, again with the SXXX. So the schedule and then the to be defined number once it's approved. So it's just very technical.
Okay. Is that Councillor Gower? Are you seconding this?
No. Council, yes, he is.
Okay, Councillor, you're agreeing? Okay. So on the amendment, the technical amendment, carried?
Carried.
On the
Yeas and nays?
yeas and nays on the main report.
Correct.
Support, if you support the staff and planning committee, it's yay. If you don't, it's nay.
Councillor Moffat.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff.
Yes.
Councillor Harder.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanagh.
No.
Councillor Suds.
Yeah.
Councillor Derouse.
Yes.
Conseil Cloutier.
Oui.
Councillor Leeper.
No.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Eglai.
Yes.
Councillor Shirelli. Councillor McKenney.
No.
Councillor Menard.
No.
Councillor Meehan.
No.
Conseil Fleury.
Oui.
Councillor Brockington.
No.
Councillor King.
No.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes. Sorry, yes.
Councillor Deans. Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Mayor Watson.
Yes.
14 yeas, 7 nays.
Okay. So we have the motion by Councillor Dudas to go in camera on the motion. Carried. And now the clerk will give us our instructions again with respect to going in camera on Zoom. Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members may return to the same Microsoft Teams session that they previously joined for the other in-camera item. We would ask members to join as soon as possible to ensure they're able to connect and then remain on mute while we get ourselves sorted in the clerk's office.